Today, we're diving into one of the most prescient satirical films ever made, Idiocracy. The film opens with a narrator explaining the central premise that will drive the entire story. Evolution, we're told, doesn't necessarily reward intelligence. The narrator walks us through a hypothetical scenario where the smartest people in society delay having children while the less intelligent reproduce at alarming rates. We see generations passing, and with each one, the average intelligence of the population drops lower and lower. The smart people are having fewer kids, dumb people are having more, and society is on a downward trajectory. Now, the narrator explains that what we're about to see is a story of the world. This brings us to our protagonist, Corporal Joe Bowers, played by Luke Wilson. Joe is an army librarian, a job that tells you everything you need to know about his personality. He's the definition of average. He has no outstanding talents, no exceptional abilities, just a normal guy with a normal life who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. The experiment is simple. They'll put Joe in suspended animation for 1 year, study him, and bring him back. Simple, right? There's just one problem. They need a female subject too. They can't find one in the military, so they turn to less conventional sources. Enter Rita, played by Maya Rudolph. Rita is a prostitute who works for a pimp named Upgrade, spelled with 2 Ds for a double dose of his pimping. The military pays off Upgrade, gets Rita to agree to participate, and now they have their 2 test subjects. We see Joe and Rita being put into their hibernation pods. The officer in charge, a Captain Collins, promises them it will only be a year. They'll be monitored the whole time. Everything will be fine. What goes through with it? The pods seal, they go into suspended animation, and the experiment begins. But here's where things go sideways. While Joe and Rita are frozen, Captain Collins gets into some kind of scandal involving prostitution, which is ironic given his involvement with Rita, and gets arrested. The base where the experiment is being conducted gets shut down. The project is completely forgotten. The hibernation pods are buried under debris, and no one even remembers they exist. Joe and Rita are supposed to be asleep for 1 year, but they end up being forgotten completely. 500 years pass. The movie jumps forward to the year 2505, and the narrator brings us up to speed on what happened to humanity. Remember that trend we saw at the beginning? It continued. The smart people kept having fewer kids, the dumb people kept having more, and the average IQ of the human race plummeted by 2505. Society has degraded to the point where most people have an IQ of around 20 or 30. They can barely form complete sentences. Advertising and commercialism have run completely rampant, and corporations have taken over everything. The world has become a dystopian nightmare where the stupid rule the roost. People live in plastic huts called domiciles. The English language has deteriorated into a hybrid of hillbillish, valley girl, inner city slang, and various grunts. The infrastructure has collapsed, and society is barely functioning. Washington, D.C. is a wasteland. The only things that survive are consumerism and entertainment, both stripped down to their most primal, idiotic forms. And it's in this world that Joe's hibernation pod is finally discovered. A mountain-sized pile of garbage collapses, and the avalanche unearths the 2 pods. Joe's pod comes crashing down and smashes through the wall of an apartment belonging to a man named Frito Pendejo, played by Dax Shepard. Frito is our first taste of the future, and he's everything we've been told. He's watching a TV show called Ow, My Balls, a program that consists of a man getting hit in the groin repeatedly. Frito is completely mesmerized by it. When Joe's pod crashes through his wall, Frito's reaction is pure annoyance at being interrupted. He doesn't even care that a man just crashed into his apartment. He just wants to get back to his show. Frito, still angry about the damage to his wall, throws Joe out of the apartment. Joe stumbles out into the streets of this future world, and the full weight of what he's seen begins to hit him. The streets are filled with people who are clearly not smart. They're dressed in ridiculous outfits, they can barely speak, and everything is covered in advertisements. Joe wanders around completely disoriented and thinking he might be hallucinating. Joe's journey through this new world continues, and he starts seeing just how broken society has become. He makes his way to a hospital, hoping to get some answers or maybe some medical help. He's still convinced that the military gave him some kind of hallucinogenic drug as part of the experiment. He's thinking any minute now he'll wake up in 2005 and everything will be normal. The hospital itself is a nightmare of incompetence. Doctors are essentially useless. They know less than Joe does. The medical equipment has been automated to the point that no human intervention is needed. The auto doctor does all the work while the medical staff just stand around confused. The doctor Joe encounters is barely able to string a sentence together. While waiting in the hospital, Joe picks up a magazine and sees the date. It's March 2505. 500 years. The realization hits him like a ton of bricks. He's been asleep for 5 centuries. Everyone he knew is dead. The world he knew is gone. And the people around him are so stupid they can barely function. He's trapped in a nightmare. But the real trouble starts when the hospital staff realize Joe doesn't have an identification tattoo. In this future, everyone has a barcode tattoo on their arm that serves as their ID credit card and everything else. Joe doesn't have one because he's from 2005. The doctor starts screaming, "Why come you? No have a tattoo?" And Joe realizes he needs to get out of there. He leaves the hospital and tries to figure out his next move. He's in Washington, D.C., but it looks nothing like the city he remembers. Chummy restaurant that's taken over, and when Joe tries to buy something, he can't because he has no barcode. The automated system in the restaurant handles the situation in the most dystopian way possible. It sprays the customer with tranquilizers and takes their children away. Meanwhile, Joe's presence has been noticed by the authorities authorities. He gets arrested for not having a tattoo, crime in this world. He's taken to a courtroom where his trial is conducted by the most incompetent legal system imaginable. Frito Pendejo, the man whose apartment Joe crashed into, shows up as his lawyer, but Frito isn't there to help him. He's still mad about the hole in his wall. So Frito makes sure Joe is found guilty and sentenced to prison. Joe is officially a criminal. During the trial, Joe experiences more of the idiocy of this world. The judge can barely speak, the lawyers have no idea what they're doing, and the proceedings are more like a circus than a court. Joe can't believe any of this is happening, but it only gets worse from here. Joe is sent to a correctional facility. When he arrives, he gets processed by a faulty voice recognition machine. He says his name is Joe Bores, but the machine hears not sure and tattoos that on his arm instead. So now his name, according to this world, is not even yourself anymore. Joe is given a simple test with basic questions that an average person from 2005 could answer easily. But for the people of this time, the questions are impossibly hard. Joe breezes through the test without even trying. The system registers his score, and this is the moment that changes everything. Joe Bowers, the most average person in 2005, is now the smartest person alive in 2005, by far. His score on the IQ test makes him an anomaly. He's so far above everyone else that the system doesn't know what to do with it. The prison guards don't know how to handle it, but Joe sees an opportunity. He's smart, and everyone around him is dumb. He can use that to his advantage. Joe figures out a way to escape. He simply tells one of the guards that he's in the wrong line and should be getting out instead of coming in. The guard, being too dumb to question this, just lets him walk out. Joe doesn't have to fight anyone or break any locks. He just walks out the door. The fact that he can talk his way out of prison because everyone is too stupid to question him tells you everything about this world. Now free, Joe makes his way back to Frito's apartment. As much as he hates the guy, Frito is the only person he knows in this world. Joe needs information, and Frito might be able to give it to him. Specifically, Joe wants to know if there's any way to go back to 2005. There has to be a time machine, right? Frito, despite being incredibly stupid, actually does know about a time machine. He says there's one in a giant Costco store. But Frito doesn't want to help Joe for free. He wants something in return, so Joe makes a deal with him. Joe will open a bank account in Frito's name in 2005, assuming Joe can get back there, and over the next 500 years, the compound interest will make Frito unbelievably rich. This plan appeals to Frito on a fundamental level. He likes money. He's also too dumb to really understand the complexities of the plan, but he gets that he'll be rich. So Frito agrees to help Joe find the time machine. They set off together, with Frito promising to get Joe back to his own time. Meanwhile, Rita has also woken up in this future. She was in a separate hibernation pod that also got unearthed. She's been making her way in this world too, and she's handling it better than Joe because she's used to dealing with stupid people. Rita has gone back to her former profession, and she's discovered something interesting. The men in this future are so dumb that she can charge them money and not even have to do anything. She's essentially getting paid for nothing because they're too stupid to know the difference. Joe and Frito begin their journey to find the mysterious time machine. Frito, being the brilliant navigator he is, leads Joe into a gigantic Costco. This Costco is nothing like the ones from 2005. It's absolutely massive, the size of a city, and it's become more than just a store. It's essentially the seat of government in this world. The Costco has employees at the entrance who greet everyone with, "Welcome to Costco. I love you." It's the kind of forced friendliness that's been taken to its logical extreme. People are so obsessed with corporate culture that they've lost any sense of real human connection. Everything is a brand. Everything is an advertisement. Inside the Costco, we get to see more of the ridiculous consumer culture that has taken over. Fuddruckers has been renamed something completely inappropriate. Starbucks has changed its model entirely. The sign lists the prices for various types of coffee, and the extras are astronomical. A hot latte costs a fortune. The world has become a parody of itself. Joe is trying to find the time machine, but he has no idea where to look. Frito says it's somewhere in the store, but his directions are completely useless. The map Frito gives Joe is a tangled mess of incomprehensible drawings and notes. Joe can't make heads or tails of it. They're wandering through this massive store, completely lost. Then disaster strikes. The Costco has the same scanning technology that the authorities used to find Joe earlier. His barcode tattoo gets scanned, and immediately the system flags him as a fugitive. Armed guards converge on his location. Frito abandons Joe to save himself. Joe is arrested again, but this arrest is different from the last one. Instead of being taken back to the correctional facility, Joe is taken to the White House. It turns out that his IQ test scores have been reviewed, and they've identified him as the smartest person alive. The authorities have decided that he needs to be put towards solving the nation's problems. In the White House, Joe is brought before President Dwayne Camacho, played by Terry Crews, and Camacho is an incredible character. He's a former professional wrestler, of course, who was elected president because he was famous. He's loud, he's obnoxious, and he's incredibly stupid. He's wearing a ridiculous outfit that combines a wrestling singlet with presidential robes. It's absurd. But this is the leader of the free world. Camacho is facing a crisis. The country is in shambles. The crops are failing. The economy is collapsing. There are dust storms everywhere. Acne is at epidemic levels. People are dying in the streets. Camacho is desperate for solutions, but he's too dumb to come up with any himself. Enter Joe, the smartest man alive. Camacho explains to Joe that he's going to be the new Secretary of the Interior. He's going to fix all the country's problems. Camacho gives him an ultimatum. Joe has 1 week to solve the food shortage, the economy, the dust storms, and everything else. If he does, he'll get a presidential pardon for all his crimes. If he doesn't, he'll go back to prison and then to rehabilitation, which Camacho does not explain, but we find out later is code for being executed. Joe, of course, is shocked by all of this. He's an army librarian, he's not a politician, but Camacho doesn't care. He's the smartest man alive, and that means he has to fix things. Joe doesn't have a choice. He accepts the job. Joe is taken to a cabinet meeting, and the cabinet is even more ridiculous than the president. These are the people who are supposed to be running the country. They're all incredibly stupid. They don't understand basic concepts. They don't know how the world works. They're completely incompetent. The cabinet explains to Joe what's causing the food shortage. The nation's crops are being irrigated with a sports drink called Brondo. Brondo is a massive corporation that has bought the FDA, the FAC, and several other government agencies. They can do whatever they want. And what they want is for everyone to use Brondo for everything, including watering crops. Joe is horrified. He tries to explain that plants need water, not sports drinks. But the cabinet doesn't understand. They keep repeating the Brondo slogan. It's got what plants crave. Joe says, what do plants crave? And the answer is always the same. Electrolytes. They're too dumb to understand. So he tries a different tactic. He tells them he can talk to plants, and the plants told him they want water. This bizarre claim actually works because the cabinet is too stupid to question it. They agree to switch the irrigation system from Brondo to water, but there are consequences to this decision. Brondo employs half the population. When word gets out that the government has stopped using their product for crops, Brondo's stock price plummets. The company's automated systems immediately lay off everyone. Half the country is suddenly unemployed. There are mass riots in the streets. Meanwhile, Joe's plan to switch to water doesn't produce immediate results. The crops don't improve overnight. The people who are now unemployed because of Joe are angry. They want someone to blame. Joe is now facing the full weight of the nation's anger. The unemployment crisis has created massive social unrest. There are riots in the streets. People are demanding answers. And since the government can't provide any real answers, they need a scapegoat. That scapegoat is Joe. The former Brondo employees are the angriest. They've lost everything. Their jobs are gone. Their families are starving, and it's all because of this strange man who came from nowhere and started making changes. Joe is in danger. The mob is coming for him, and there's no one to protect him because the government can barely function. The proceedings are just as ridiculous as the first trial. Joe is convicted of causing the unemployment crisis and the riots. There's no real defense because the legal system is a complete joke. Joe is sentenced to die. The sentence is rehabilitation, but in this world, rehabilitation means being forced to fight to the death in a monster truck demolition derby. Joe will be placed in the ring against an undefeated rehabilitation officer named Beef Supreme, as a massive, terrifying figure who has killed everyone who's ever been sent against him. Joe has no chance. At this point, Joe is at his lowest. He's been arrested, imprisoned, made Secretary of the Interior, tried to fix the country, and now he's going to die. All because he was unlucky enough to be average in 2005. Everything that could have gone wrong has gone wrong. Joe is facing certain death. Meanwhile, the country is in even worse shape than before. The unemployment crisis continues. The crops still aren't growing. The dust storms are getting worse. People are starving. The government is in chaos. No one knows what to do. Camacho is panicking because he promised the country solutions and nothing has worked. But it's at this moment that a glimmer of hope appears. Joe's plan to use water instead of Brondo was right. It just took longer than expected to work. The soil is finally starting to recover. The nutrients from the water are bringing the crops back to life. It's slow, but it's happening. Plants are starting to grow. The first crops are sprouted. The solution to the food crisis is right there. Rita discovers this first. She's been trying to figure out how to help Joe, and she comes across the newly sprouting crops. She sees that they're growing, and she realizes that Joe was right. The water works. She has proof that Joe's plan is working. She just needs to get this information to the right people. Frito is also involved in this. He may be dumb, but he's starting to realize that Joe might actually be onto something. The plants are growing. The people are going to need to eat, and if Joe is proven right, maybe he can be saved. Frito agrees to help Rita get the message out. The plan is to get the video of the new crops onto the stadium's massive screen during Joe's execution. If they can show everyone that the crops are growing, they can prove that Joe was right all along. It might be enough to get him a pardon, but time is running out. The demolition derby is about to start. The night of the execution arrives. The stadium is packed with people who have come to watch Joe die. This is the ultimate entertainment for the people of 2505. They're going to watch the smartest man alive get killed by a monster truck. It's like a sporting event, and the crowd is excited. Joe is brought out into the arena. Beef Supreme is there in his monster truck, the Beef Mobile. It's terrifying. Beef Supreme has been doing this for years, and he's never lost. Joe is just an ordinary guy with no combat experience. He doesn't stand a chance. That's the way things work in this world. Camacho doesn't see Joe as a person. He sees him as a spectacle, but just as the match is about to begin, there's a commotion outside. Rita and Frito have arrived. They've brought video evidence of the growing crops. They fight their way through the crowd to get to the control room. The execution is about to start, but they might be able to stop it if they can get the video on the screen. In the arena, the match begins. Beef Supreme revs his engine and charges at Joe. Joe is terrified. He's an army librarian, not a fighter. He can't survive survive this. Beef Supreme is going to kill him. The crowd is on their feet, screaming for blood. Joe is running for his life. Rita and Frito manage to get to the control room. They force the cameraman to switch the feed from the arena to the new footage of the crops. The crowd is confused at first. They came to see a death, not a slideshow of plant life. But as the image comes into focus, people start to realize what they're seeing. The crops are growing. There's food. The crisis might be over. Then the craziest thing happens. Frito, in his excitement, has lost his pants at some point during the struggle, and he gets into a fight with the cameraman. This is shown on the screen too. The crowd is now watching a man with no pants fighting a cameraman over the footage of the crops. It's ridiculous, but somehow it works. People are laughing. The tension in the stadium changes. This isn't about the execution anymore. He sees the growing crops, and he realizes that Joe was right all along. The water worked. Joe fixed the food crisis. Camacho doesn't fully understand what happened, but he knows that Joe has succeeded. He rushes down to the arena, telling everyone to stop the execution. Beef Supreme, who was about to kill Joe, suddenly has his vehicle stopped. The execution is called off. Joe is saved. Camacho announces that Joe is getting a full presidential pardon. Joe has proven himself. The people in the crowd are happy. They've gotten their entertainment, and now they have food too. It's a win-win. Joe is brought before Camacho, and the president announces that Joe is going to be the new vice president. Joe has gone from being an army librarian to secretary of the interior to being sentenced to death to being the vice president. In just a few days, Joe has had the most incredible career arc imaginable. Camacho then announces his retirement. He's going to step down as president, and he wants Joe to run for the office. Joe, the smartest man alive, is being offered the presidency. It's the ending that Joe never could have imagined. He's gone from being a nobody to being the most powerful person in the world. But there's still one problem. Joe still wants to go back to 2005. He hasn't given up on the idea of the time machine. He takes Rita with him, and together they go to find the time machine. Joe and Rita follow Frito to the time machine. They've been through so much together, and Joe still believes that he can get back to his own time. Rita is skeptical, but she's willing to go along with it. They're both exhausted from everything they've been through. They arrive at the location where Frito claimed the time machine would be, and what they find is not what they expected. The time machine is a cheap, inaccurate, history-themed amusement park ride. It's designed to entertain children, not to actually transport anyone through time. The whole time Frito was talking about a ride. There is no actual time machine. Joe is devastated. All that hope, all that effort, all that belief that he could get home, and it was all based on a misunderstanding. There's no way back. Joe is trapped in 2505. Everyone he knew, everyone he loved, they're all gone. He'll never see them again. It's a hopeful note. Joe and Rita's intelligence is being passed on to the next generation. The future might not be as bleak as it seemed, but there's also a darkly comedic note. Frito, who is now Joe's vice president, has taken 8 wives and fathered 3 children. The narration tells us that Frito's children are considered the dumbest kids ever to walk the earth. The intelligence gap between Joe's family and Frito's family is the ultimate expression of the film's premise. Evolution hasn't been reversed, but it's being balanced by Joe and Rita's contributions. The film ends with Joe and Rita accepting their new life. This is their home now. Joe is going to use his intelligence to try to make things better. It's a bittersweet ending. Joe lost everything he knew, but he gained a purpose. He's the smartest man in the world, and he's going to try to save it. But there's one more scene after the credits roll. A third hibernation pod is shown, cracking open. It's Upgrade, Rita's old pimp. He's been frozen too, and he's looking for Rita. He wants his cut of her earnings. He's going to be a problem for Joe and Rita. The film ends on this cliffhanger, suggesting that the chaos might not be over yet.